enhance your ability to persuade and influence. Keep watching. This is Life Mastery Gym. I'm Damon Card, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. I've been practicing NLP for several years. I use it to achieve goals. I've used it in sales. I use it when I coach clients, and I've even used it in dating. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to use NLP to build rapport rapidly so you can be better at influencing and persuading. As always, if you have any questions or comments, put them right down here in the comment section and I will respond to you. The first thing to understand is that all persuasion and influence happens in the container of rapport. And that doesn't matter if you're using it for sales, if you're using it with therapy clients or coaching clients. Everything starts with rapport, and everything that you do to influence must remain in that container of rapport. So what is rapport? Rapport is just another word for trust and familiarity. If somebody feels like you're familiar to them in some way, or if you have some sort of shared experience that makes you feel familiar with someone, then you're usually in rapport. If you think of an old friend who, no matter how long you go without seeing this friend, or no matter how long you go without talking to this friend, when you do see them or talk to them, it's like you pick right up where you left off. You're basically in rapport right away. Nobody is going to do anything that you suggest if they don't feel at least a certain sense of rapport with you. So if you're in a sales situation and you want to move that person to the sale, they've got to feel at least a little bit like you're familiar enough to them that they can trust you. And you can think of your own experiences of when you bought something. You don't buy things from people that you don't feel like you trust. Now, there's one exception to this. You can influence and persuade people with fear, like using threats. Now, I don't recommend doing that because it's not a long-term strategy. You're only going to make people not like you and not trust you. In the long run, they may do something in the moment because they fear for their life, or if you're holding some sort of threat over their head of losing a job or losing money, they may do what you want them to do. But that's, like I said, a short-term strategy that's not going to work out very well for you in the long run. So yes, you can do that, and yes, that's not being in rapport, but we don't want to do that. So we want to be able to build rapport with people quickly. We want people to trust us quickly. We want them to feel good with us, and we want them to feel familiar with us. So I'll give you an example of that. I'm here in Istanbul, Turkey, and anytime I go to a different country, I like to just learn a few phrases or a few words so that I can build rapport with them, and that is matching. It's not exactly mirroring, but it is matching. So if you can speak someone else's language, they will often feel immediately more familiar with you and more like they can trust you. A few nights ago, we were at a restaurant, and instead of trying to learn how to say good night in Turkish on Google, which is easy to look up, instead I asked the waiter, how do I say good night? Because we were at the end of our dinner. How do I say good night in Turkish? So we went back and forth like this, him saying how to say the word correctly, and I'm knowing that I'm not saying it correctly because he keeps repeating it. And finally, I nailed the accent well enough that it sounded like I was saying it right. Immediately, you could see the look on his face. He kind of lit up. He kind of brightened up and relaxed a little bit. Like suddenly we had this rapport that we were experiencing because I was speaking his language, even if it was just one word. And there was a person behind him who worked at the restaurant, and he kind of lit up too, and he repeated it back to me to say good night in Turkish. So just showing interest and then showing or repeating back to him the word that in his language, which he knew I didn't speak, that was a way of matching his experience and making us feel more familiar to each other. Now, I wasn't there to sell him anything or influence him to do anything in particular, but I'm really sure that if I go back to that restaurant, not only will he remember me, but he will probably give me even better service than what he gave me a few nights ago, which was really good service, but he will probably go a little further than that, go the extra mile. I had to move inside because environmental factors on that rooftop were making things impossible. So here I am inside. So let's continue. What matching and mirroring really is, it's about making that person who you want to persuade feel familiar with you on an unconscious level. When it's unconscious, it's the most powerful it can possibly be. When somebody knows that you're trying to be, I don't know, familiar with them or get to know them, then it's not that they resist that necessarily, but they know what you're up to. But if you can do it on a more unconscious level, it's extremely powerful. So mirroring would be something more specific than just matching. So mirroring is when you actually mirror the person and make it look as if they're looking into a mirror. So if their posture was slightly tilted to their left, well, then you would want to tilt your posture slightly to your right, so it would match directly across from them. And then if they would raise their right hand, maybe to scratch, their face or something like that, then you would want to raise your left hand, but you don't want to do it right away. You don't want the person to feel like you're just imitating them. That would get really weird. So then later you could raise your hand, and you don't have to scratch your face. You would just raise your hand and maybe scratch your shoulder, or just pick up a pen or something like that. Make it really subtle. But when you're mirroring, again, it makes them feel familiar with you, and they won't even know why exactly. And with matching, matching is anything. Matching is you match their voice tone. Matching can be you say words that they use. You notice they say certain words more than once. Pick up that word and use it back to them. Like I said, it's voice tone. Mirroring is actually a form of matching. Really, there's no limit on what you can match, and I would even encourage you to be creative with this. How can you match that other person you want to persuade and influence? Now, I think it's also important when we talk about matching and mirroring and building rapport that we should also talk about how not to match and mirror. And what can break rapport. So when I first started learning NLP and I first started learning about matching and mirroring, I thought this was amazing. I couldn't wait to practice it to see what effects it would have. And strangely enough, it really, for me, had the opposite effect. I was repelling people. Now, why was that? I would go into, say, a sales appointment, me and one other person, and I would try to match everything that they did as much as possible, and especially mirroring. I was a perfect mirror in front of that person. And if that person raised their hand, 3 seconds later, I raised my hand. And I worked really hard at this, but it wasn't working. And I decided, well, maybe I wasn't doing it well enough. Maybe I needed to be more precise with it. So I worked even harder at trying to exactly match and mirror the person. And again, it had the opposite effect. The people were even more repelled from me. And I couldn't understand what was going on here. And I thought, well, maybe this stuff doesn't work. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just wrong, or maybe I'm just never going to get it. And I was about to quit, and I thought, well, I'm going to try one more thing. I'm just going to notice what that other person does. I'm going to pay attention to what that other person does. So I'm going to watch their breathing, and that's another thing you can match is breathing. I'm going to watch their breathing, or I'm going to listen to their breathing. I'm going to watch their posture. I'm just going to notice all these things, what we call nonverbal communication, that most people don't pay attention to. And I'm just going to see what happens. Does that build rapport? So the first time I tried that, strangely enough, it built rapport very quickly. And I was thinking, wow, I'm not even matching and mirroring the person. And then I looked down at my body, and I recognized I was doing a perfect mirror of that other person. I shouldn't say perfect. I was mirroring naturally that other person, and I wasn't even trying. And I thought, wow, how did this happen? And that is the sort of the magic of how matching and mirroring works. When you're in rapport with someone, you naturally match them. You naturally mirror them. And to the point where you might have noticed sometimes when you're in rapport with someone, but you got to go somewhere, you got to another place to be, it's really hard to tear away from that person. So that's what rapport does. It uses mirror neurons to make you feel connected to that other person. And it's very, very natural. So why was it not working when I was trying it before? I thought about this for a long time, and I finally realized what it was. When I was trying to do it perfectly, all of my attention was on myself. That's not very good for rapport. Building rapport rapidly is when the person feels that you're interested in them, that the person feels that your attention is on them. And especially when you pay attention to the nonverbals, the nonverbal communication, which most people don't do, that person will feel it. They won't know why, because it happens on a very unconscious level. They won't know why they feel so connected to you, They just will, though, because they'll feel that attention that you're giving to them, and they'll feel it in a way that they don't normally feel it when somebody is giving them attention, because you're paying attention to the nonverbals, like I said, which is what most people don't pay attention to. So it was a great lesson for me to learn that true rapport is built by showing genuine interest in that other person. They will start to trust you, and you will naturally slip into matching and mirroring that person. And it doesn't hurt to be, check in with yourself, am I doing it? And you can also, when you're naturally doing it, make a little extra effort in matching their behavior, their breathing, their voice tone. It doesn't hurt to do those things, but remember, you really need to put more attention on that other person. And I got another good example of someone else who I recently observed who was totally breaking rapport. I was in line at a grocery store, and it was taking a while, and there was only one person in front of me, and he was talking to the woman, the cashier, and I noticed he didn't have any groceries. He wasn't buying anything, but he was talking to her for a long time. So I was starting to get impatient, wondering, what is this guy doing? So I started listening to the conversation. And what I realized is that he was trying to ask her out, and he was trying to get her phone number, and he was failing miserably at it. And finally he gave up, and he walks away. And then some of her friends came over and said, wow, that was really cringy. And he actually came back again and tried to get her phone number. And again, she said no. And then he walked away. And I started thinking about, okay, well, why did that fail? Because you can totally do that. It wasn't, you can totally walk up to someone, chat them up for a few minutes, and get their phone number. It's very possible to do that. Why did he fail? Because he wasn't paying attention to her experience. What he did was he put her on the spot, first of all, and that's just part of the process if you're going to approach someone out of the blue like that. So he put her on the spot, but he didn't acknowledge that. And not only did he put her on the spot, before he put her on the spot, he started asking her questions about tequila in the store and other things in the store, that other products that he really wasn't interested in. So there was a lack of sincerity there. So he starts off with that, and then he switches to asking her for her phone number. So right away, what does she feel? Well, he was not being sincere when he first started talking to her. He was asking about other stuff. So right away, she's not feeling very trusting of this person. And then he goes straight for the phone number, which was like, give me something now. Instead of making it sound like, or working things up into rapport, and then making it seem like it would be interesting for them to talk later or to hang out later, he just goes to, hey, give me something, which is give me your phone number. Well, right away, she's, they don't have any rapport yet. They're not in that container of rapport. So of course she's gonna not be okay with that. And then he took it a step further and said that he had met her before, and that she had given her phone number to him before, so she might as well give it to him now. As in, oh, I forgot, I lost your phone number, so now I need it again. And she was like, I don't remember you. I certainly wouldn't have given you my phone number. So what's happening here? He's totally mismatching her experience. He's not only breaking rapport, he's going the absolute opposite direction, telling her that she did things that she doesn't recall doing and doesn't believe she did, and insisting on it. So in every step of the way, he's mismatching her experience and not connecting with her, and then demanding something from her. So this is a good example of how not to build rapport. To summarize, matching and mirroring is not the end goal. It's really about getting rapport, because like I said, all influence and persuasion happens in that container of rapport. Matching and mirroring will help you get there really, really fast. I mean, you can actually get in rapport with someone, a complete stranger, within 2 to 3 minutes. But it's not so much about the technique of matching and mirroring. That's more of the practice. And it's the practice of those techniques, matching and mirroring, that get you to the understanding of how to experience familiarity and trust with someone, and how to build it. Practice those techniques. Get it to the point where you get this understanding at a very deep level. And you won't have to think so much about matching and mirroring when you want to build rapport with someone. It'll start to happen more naturally. So it's more about gaining that understanding. But in order to have that understanding, you need to practice these techniques. You have a much better understanding after listening to my explanation about it, but it's not deep enough. It needs to be how we say, in the muscle. It's not really known. It's not true knowledge until it's in the muscle. So practice matching and mirroring, get good at it, go to that deeper level understanding. And the other thing too is, don't be don't get frustrated if it's not working for you. Remember what I said about the example that I told you, where you really got to put your attention on the other person. If your attention is on you and whether or not you're doing it right, then you're not doing it right, because you're putting your attention back on, too much attention back on yourself, which will break rapport. That attention really needs to be on that other person. So focus on that other person, notice those things like breathing and voice tone and all that, and then gradually start to see if you can sort of step into their world and get a sense of it. It's not so much about imitating them. It's more about, like, you want to experience the world through their perspective, and how you do that is to talk like them, to breathe like them, to arrange your posture like them. So do that, get that understanding, and this will become much easier, and you'll be able to build rapport with people rapidly. If you'd like to practice these skills in a more structured way, I have a 30-day sensory acuity and calibration training that you can do that's absolutely free. And so sensory acuity is about building that acuity of noticing the nonverbal communication, and calibration is about understanding the state that the person is in and being able to notice when they shift states. And being able to do this will build that rapport rapidly. So in the description right here down below, just click that link and you'll get access to that training. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel by clicking that subscribe button and clicking the bell, so you'll be notified when I put new videos out. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.